Today on the Star Trek Critic, the Enterprise plays asteroids. Worf says I number 1, 2, and 3. The ensign says I number 4. As usual, they come into contact with an organism that lives in space, and act like that has never happened before. This episode is the cost of living. While the Enterprise is being eaten alive, the crew has to deal with the problems of everyday life, starting with Worf struggling with being a single parent. He complains Alexander won't clean up his room. Alexander complains Worf just sings Klingon opera all day. Worf claims Alexander acts like he grew up with a family of hippies on Earth. Deanna recommends a parent-child contract. There are several families on board, but you never know if she meets with any of them. Of course, she uses the horrid term equitable. Anyone who says that is a closet Marxist. The first point is lost for Deanna in a catsuit for ratings. This is a polite way of Deanna saying get out. Then Deanna tells Alexander famous last words about appreciating your parents. 10 seconds later, she eats those words. Would this be considered a Picard maneuver? Riker would have stayed on the bridge, so -1 point. Marina Sirtis perfectly acts like someone who just discovered her mother is getting married. 1 point lost for opening credits 6 minutes into the show. 1 point lost for no advance notice of her arrival. It's impossible to randomly drop by a spaceship. 1 point lost for Mrs. Troy not telling Deanna on a video chat. Laxana calls Deanna little one in this scene once, twice, 3, 4 times in one scene. Royalty as a mail-order husband is a red flag, and 1 point lost. Since all this time, it is assumed they never video chatted either. 1 point lost for Alexander not having makeup on his neck. In reality, she would be a fun grandmother, which of course is no fun for the parents. But here comes one of the many great lines of this episode.
Contract? What contract?
This episode is unusual in that 2 secondary characters meet each other. Riker walks 1 foot behind Picard like the little ass-kisser that he is. 1 point lost for a visible microphone. Picard is pissed. He says having Mrs. Troy on the ship is worse than the narrator using an AI-generated voice. I can't wait till season 6, and he goes back to his real voice. Picard sadly thinks giving Mrs. Troy away will mean she won't come back to bother him. That's wasted wishful thinking. As usual, an extra crosses when the doors open. This is a wonderful scene between Mrs. Troy and Alexander. Both are going through a personal crisis and find escape with each other. Mrs. Troy says let's break the rules. As usual, an extra crosses when the door opens. 1 point lost for a single set of doors on the turbolift. Mrs. Troy gets excited and brags about how sexy the computer voice sounds. Now it's off to the Parallax colony of Shiralia 6. In this simulation, the projections are already on the doors. The Windtalker is played by Larry Hankin, who has 200 screen credits and will be back on Voyager. The Juggler was played by Albie Selznick. He was the tightrope walker on Xanadu, and will be back on Voyager. Sadly, AIDS took David Oliver at the age of 30, but you can see him in the show A Year in the Life. Tracy Darcy decided to be the producer of Roswell in Las Vegas. George Eady left us at the age of 75, leaving young Alexander with some very inspirational words. Deanna says, Worf, extras keep crossing whenever the doors open. I think they are spies. Worf says, yes, these extras are really nosy. 1 point lost. Mrs. Troy's hands are clean then dirty. 1 point lost for all the cups changing bite marks. And 1 point lost for an inappropriately dressed woman for a show that aired during Family Hour. Deanna goes off on her mother, who calls Deanna deadly dull. She won't go naked at her wedding. That's atrocious. 1 point lost for Deanna fake eating an apple, and Mrs. Troy must be really upset to drink sausage tea. Data and Geordi are thinking, the ship has a crew of 1,000. Should we have technicians going into the tunnel or do it ourselves? And 1 point lost, since it is their job to tell other people to do this for them. Data is thinking, it is a good thing I have this plate on my chest or I would be covered in goo. Majel Barrett complains that she doesn't get paid extra for every costume change. Alexander visits Mrs. Troy, and again, another beautiful speech about loneliness. A nice homage to her late husband Gene Roddenberry. Alexander says he is getting married. I think he is too young. Riker does his maneuver while the ship shakes around. Data says I number 5, so it's time for a drink. One point lost for their science terms. The inertial dampeners are what keep the inside of the ship going the same speed as the outside. If they fail, the crew turns to pancakes. Geordi says our problem is another potential actor is trying out for a part on Deep Space Nine. It is an alien substance that lives in space, eats our ship and creates nitrium poop. Picard says creatures don't live in space, it's not like we come upon them every year. Extras again cross when the doors open. 1 point lost for a reused spaceship. The late Tony Jay has 190 screen credits, as a cartoon voice in nearly everything. He was also in Twins and The Golden Girls. 1 point lost for Picard doing a handshake. That won't happen in the future. Patrick Cronin has 100 screen credits, including The Brady Brides, She's the Sheriff, and Rocky V, and now both of them are stuffy old men. Geordi and Data realize the ship is being turned into nitrium poop. What kind of batleth is that? Alexander won't eat, he just wants to be a bratty kid. I wouldn't eat this either. Alexander holds his hands just like Campio. Poor Mrs. Troy, she is willing to accommodate to his culture, but Campio refuses to accommodate to her. Urko has a great line.
The woman should not be addressing you in the familiar.
But if this was the real world, he would be smacked across the ship. Worf and Deanna arrive just as the spies cross outside the door. This is a very good three-way argument. Campio believes his word is law. Even Mrs. Troy doesn't like Deanna's outfits. In the middle of the arguing, Mrs. Troy and Alexander sneak out. Data and Geordi are in the ship's darkroom thinking, I bet most kids watching this video have no idea what a darkroom is. But they get a good look at the parasites leaving behind nitrium poop. Again, another beautiful conversation between Mrs. Troy and Alexander. In her 6 appearances on the show, 5 of those are among the best. Picard is wondering, why do we have a darkroom on a spaceship when digital cameras were created 400 years ago? Data says I number 5, so it's time for another drink. 1 point lost for no one else in engineering. What happened to all the extras? Riker says I number 6. 1 point lost for saying parasites living in space don't like the cold. 1 point lost since the ship's computer never mentioned any type of damage. 1 point lost for Picard's uniform only having 3 pips. Picard says to halt at the next level, which is the bridge. Have you ever wondered why the turbolift doesn't post the level on the inside? This would come in handy if you are stuck and need to call for help. 1 point lost for a single set of doors on the turbolift. Picard maneuver number 1. Worf says I number 7. Data says I number 8. 1 point lost for the oxygen immediately disappearing. When they lose life support, the air will last for hours or even days. They are more likely to freeze to death. So why are they sweating? -1 point. There is a calculation error in the time it would take between warp 9 and 6, so -1 point. Data says I number 9. 1 point lost since asteroids will not all move in sync like that. Data activated the Bussard collectors, but that's not the collector. -1 point. 1 point lost for everyone regaining consciousness at the same time. 1 point lost for the ship magically healing itself just in time for the end of the show. Picard maneuver 2 and 3, and 1 point lost for the white line at the bottom of the screen. I hope that wasn't someone's drink. Campio just stuck his grimy old fingers in it. Urko is wondering what happened to all those extras crossing when the doors open. 1 point lost for the wedding being held in 10 forward, when this massive ship has rooms specifically for this purpose. A reminder of how cheap the set producers are. Now for Majel Barrett's final costume change. 1 point lost for a visible body stocking. This is such an important scene for her as a new widow, as well as all the message to all the older women of her situation, that if you hit the point where you have to compromise who you are to prevent being alone, it is better just to show the world that being yourself will just have to be everyone else's problem, and you are going to move on and explore the galaxy, preferably naked. Beverly, of course, is thinking, she is naked, that's sexist, and that's why I don't have any speaking parts, so -1 point. This is Carol Stryken's final appearance as Mr. Hom. He is 7 feet tall and was born in the Netherlands. He has a website called Spherical Panoramas, which shows photos with 360-degree images. He has 50 screen credits, including Sgt. Pepper, the Ewok movie, Babylon 5, and will be back on Voyager. This is probably the only episode that ends in a mud bath, and of course Worf always gets the best lines.
You're just supposed to sit here.
The Cost of Living. An excellent show, allowing Majel Barrett to say goodbye to her late husband for all of Star Trek to see, gets a score of 67%. Thanks for viewing. Be sure to leave comments below, click the like button, the share button, the subscribe button, and come back next week for The Perfect Mate.